Yesterday I made a video counting down my top 10 heroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so today it's only fitting that I count down my top 10 villains. Now, quick reminder before I get into this, at the time of recording this, it is the week of Thor Love and Thunder, so to celebrate, I am releasing a video every day for the next week. Yesterday I did top 10 heroes, today's top 10 villains. The rest of the schedule will be up on screen for you right now, so come back every day through July 10th for a new video. Throughout the 28 films and the 5 main shows, I'm not counting What If because that's an alternate scenario, in the MCU, we have had a lot of villains. A lot of them are bad, but there are some very good ones, and so I figured it would be fun to count down the top 10. Now, a couple things before I get into this. I'm not including any of the Netflix shows or the ABC shows. One, because I haven't seen all of them, and two, this list would be very dominated by those characters if I included them. So I'm just gonna give you just a quick little montage of what villains would be on the top 10 list if I was counting all of the Marvel television shows. So with that out of the way, let's hop into the list. At number 10, we have John Walker, aka US Agent from The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a show that disappointed me immensely, but John Walker's storyline was my favorite part and the most compelling aspect of it, and he is one of my favorite characters introduced in Phase 4. From him starting out of wanting to be the best Captain America he can be, and his slow descent into a villain because of that before his short little redemption arc at the end of the series, I think it was the most consistent, coherent, and the most compelling aspect of that. I just hope that in Thunderbolts, when he inevitably comes back, that they don't undo the development he had through that series. Now, is it a bit of a stretch to call him a villain? I'm gonna say no, because he does become an antagonistic figure. Not from the get-go, but as the episodes go on, he becomes more and more villainous to the point that he executes someone in the street with the Captain America shield, and we get that haunting shot of blood on the shield before Falcon and Bucky have to go kick his butt to take it back. So yes, he most certainly is a villain. He was the most compelling aspect of that show, and he's one of the best villains the MCU has had. Now, keeping it with the Captain America theme, at number 9 we have the Winter Soldier. I was hesitant to put him on here because the Winter Soldier is just a silent assassin and he's a lapdog for Alexander Pierce. He doesn't have much of a personality of his own, but I couldn't help myself in putting him on this list just because he's so memorable because of that. Not every villain needs to be super compelling and have a motive that you don't get behind but you can understand. Some of them can just be a silent badass. That's what the Winter Soldier is. From his first scene when he does the assassination attempt on Nick Fury, up through the fantastic highway fight, as well as that chase scene when he throws the shield back to Cap. The third act when he and Cap are duking it out and Winter Soldier's giving it his all. Not to mention, he looks cooler than just about every villain on this list. I cannot help but love the Winter Soldier. And thinking back on it, he's probably the #1 reason I rewatch Captain America: The Winter Soldier. And one more time, we're gonna stick with Captain America. Because at number 8, we have Baron Helmut Zemo. Now, Zemo would have been higher on this list if it was not for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because when that show made him a Baron and made him filthy rich, it made him a much less compelling. But if we look at him in Captain America Civil War, everything he accomplished deserves him or earns him a spot on the top 10. Because for starters, before we even get into what makes his character so compelling, we just have to start off by talking about the fact that he broke the Avengers with no superpowers. He did it completely with his mind and his intellect. He managed to defeat Earth's mightiest heroes, and he managed to get Iron Man in a position where he almost killed both Bucky and Steve Rogers, who was his friend. And it would have been very easy to just make Zemo a one-note villain who just wants to destroy the Avengers, but luckily they add more to it than that. He's Sokovian. His family was killed in the battle because the Avengers were reckless. He wants them to pay for that. He wants them to kill each other. And he's always listening to that voicemail from his son, which gives him just a bit more depth, that that's all he has left of his wife, and that he keeps listening to it because that's all he has left of them. It adds a layer of complexity and depth to Zemo, and it makes me love Zemo.
An empire toppled by its enemies can rise again, but one which crumbles from within, that's dead forever.
So many people find him think he's like a disappointing one-note villain. Those people were not paying attention. Zemo's one of the most complex characters in Captain America Civil War, and he did what only one other villain could, and that's Thanos, but Thanos was a god. At number 7, we have a villain who used to be in the top 3, but has come down because luckily they have really upped their villain game these last few years in the MCU. At number 7 is Loki. Loki is great. Loki is fun. That's what more than most villains makes Loki so great, is he's just such a fun villain. You love watching him on screen, always scheming, he's being mischievous, he's always acting in his own self-interest. Granted, he does have a redemption arc in Ragnarok, which is pretty cool, but he still can't help himself because he takes the Tesseract. But he's just such a fun villain to see, and the way he's always playing everyone, he's always scheming. Loki never doesn't have a plan. He always has some sort of plan. I mean, look at Thor. Every bad thing that happened in that movie, Loki's doing. He convinced Thor to go to Jotunheim. He brought the frost giants into Asgard. He sat on the throne, refused to bring Thor back. He had the plan to destroy Jotunheim. In Avengers, once he got on that helicarrier, his plan was executed to perfection. And then in Thor the Dark World, he faked his own death to get on the throne. He is such a mad genius. You cannot help but love him. He is the most lovable villain in this franchise. And even though his motives are just that he can, it works. You know why? Because I know another villain whose motives are just that he can do what he's doing. And he's one of the greatest villains in history. At number 6, we have Eric Killmonger from Black Panther. This guy actually used to be my number 2 villain. He's come down 4 spots since then. But you can't help but think Killmonger's a great villain. He's not a character you like. You don't like him. He's not likable. But he's a villain that you love. And so much of it does boil down to Michael B. Jordan's performance as Killmonger. I personally think it's one of the best performances in the MCU. His origin story is heartbreaking. His reasoning for wanting the throne makes sense. To an extent, he is kind of an extremist, but you can see how it makes sense in his mind. And his motive, his drive, his goal, not gonna lie, he's kind of right. So right to the point that he actually changes the hero. And that's what puts him on this list above everything else. No other villain has changed the hero to this degree. Killmonger convinced T'Challa that Wakanda needs to be run differently. And that's exactly what happens. And that's why he's so compelling. No other villain on this list has changed the hero quite like Killmonger has. Alright, that's the bottom half. Now we're getting into the upper echelon, the tier of villains I absolutely adore, and they are the gold standard for MCU villains. So bringing us to number 5 is Vulture. Now, it took every fiber of my being not to lower Vulture because of what they did to him in Morbius, but I'm just refusing to acknowledge that film. If we're looking purely in terms of MCU, Vulture, fan-flippin-tastic. I like that Vulture's just a guy. He's a poor guy. He's not, or he ends up living large, but he wasn't living large. He wasn't this big billionaire. He was just a family man who was wronged by people above him. and he wanted to do something about it. And it's a cool thing that the MCU hadn't touched on to that point of what it's like for everyone who's below the Avengers, what it's like for everyone else, just the common folk in this world, what's it like for them? That's basically what Spider-Man Homecoming is about, and that's what Vulture's story is about. He is doing everything that he's doing for his family. He doesn't even want to kill people. He's just doing what he feels like he needs to do because he's been wronged, and that's echoed brilliantly in his speech to Spider-Man in that very movie.
Those people, Pete, those people up there, the rich and the powerful, they do whatever they want. Guys like us, they don't care about us.
I cannot get enough of Vulture. Actually, I can, because I know what Sony's going to do with him. I don't want more Vulture. But Vulture in the MCU is great. In the Sony universe, he's not. In fourth place, we have the newest villain in the MCU, the Scarlet Witch. I knew Wanda would be a good villain. I didn't know Wanda would be one of the best villains. And shout out to Elizabeth Olsen. Her performance in that movie was nothing short of legendary. Alright, if you hear a noise in the background, I turn on my ceiling fan to try to vent out my room. It's really warm in here right now. It's kind of tucked away in the corner, and it's 90 degrees outside, so it becomes a hot box. I think the thing I love most about Wanda as a villain is just how driven and how determined she is and how she doesn't stop. She just keeps going throughout the movie. She never ever takes a break. It's awesome. And you don't agree with why she's doing what she's doing. But to an extent, you can understand what her goal is and why she feels she should achieve that goal. You know, she has lost everything. And she wouldn't be as great of a villain if we have not seen that loss echoed throughout the franchise, because we see her lose Quicksilver, and then WandaVision we see, and then she has to kill Vision, then Vision comes back just for her to then watch Vision die, then she dies, then she comes back, and then WandaVision we see how her parents died, and we see how she became who she is, and then the whole Hex thing and having to lose her kids and Vision again. Her entire life has been defined by tragedy, so her character arc up to that point justifies the villainous state she's in now, so the build up to her being a villain is as good as the build up to, I don't know, Tony Stark's death. It's up there with some of the best character arcs we've gotten in this franchise, and I think it's funny how Wanda is like a B-tier hero but an S-tier villain. She just wants something. She just wants to finally be happy, and she doesn't get that. Bringing us into the top 3, taking home the bronze medal today, we have Green Goblin. Green Goblin in Spider-Man No Way Home is better than Green Goblin in the original Spider-Man. Green Goblin is one of the best villains in the MCU. He's one of the best villains in modern comic book movies, and taking that mask off Willem Dafoe was one of the best creative decisions they've made. Green Goblin is just wanna watch the world burn. He's in here just to make Spider-Man's life a living hell, and I was there for all of it. I had a smile on my face as he did it. It's all I've wanted, and he executed it to perfection. He was fantastic. He was fun. The laugh was psychotic. It was sinister. He was a badass. It was everything I want from Green Goblin, and I love that they gave it to me. And then the second reason Green Goblin works so well in this movie is because the writers did everything they could to humanize Norman Osborn so that when the twist into Green Goblin happens, it's more heartbreaking because you've seen this super nice guy throughout the rest of the movie. You've seen someone who wants to help Peter. He wants to help all these other villains. He wants to help Aunt May. He's just trying to be a good person, and he's scared because he's in a different universe. And then it switches to Green Goblin, who could not be happier to get the chance at ruining another Spider-Man's life. Number 2 and number 1 were a toss-up for me, but number 2 I went with Wenwu from Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. He is another villain who is defined by love and defined by tragedy, and I love villains who are like that. He was immortal, and then he gave it all up to when he met the woman he loved, and he had a family, and they were all chilling out, just having a great time. He could not be happier. He had everything he wanted. And then those bitch asses came and killed her which then set him back onto the path to become the Mandarin, even though he's not the Mandarin. He's supposed to be the real Mandarin because he's the master behind the 10 rings. You watched the movie. If you didn't, why the hell are you watching this section of the video? And for his motive to then be that he wants his kid trained and he wants to make sure nothing like this will ever happen again. And for him to then want to go on this revenge quest and train Shang-Chi to go do it. By the way, it's great that they never confirm whether or not Shang-Chi actually did it. It's beautiful. And for him to go to Ta Lo, and you feel like he's sort of justified. You want him to lose, but deep down inside you're like, yeah, he's kind of justified in what he's doing. He then is like, I don't want to fight you, dude. He doesn't want to fight his kids. That's a great layer that they added to it. He doesn't want to fight them, but he's going to if he has to get what he wants. And then it ends with that great redemption, if you can say it, where he gives Shang-Chi the rings and he's like, all right, and he dies. Wenwu's such a good villain. I did not think he would be as good of a villain as he was, but hey, third time's the charm on the Mandarin, I guess, because Wenwu is amazing. But coming in at number 1, it was pretty obvious. The Mad Titan himself, Thanos. What is there to say about Thanos that has not been said? Everything about this dude works. His motive, his characterization, his look, his power set. There's nothing wrong about him. He is the best of the best in terms of villainy. And the way that they managed to humanize him in such a great way between both Infinity War and Endgame that it makes him the best villain. I don't want to get super in depth on what makes Thanos great because you can find 18 million videos on there by it, but Thanos is without a shadow of a doubt the greatest villain this franchise has ever seen and probably ever will. Unless Gorr the Godbutcher is as good as Taika Waititi says he is. But there you guys have it. That's my list of the top 10 villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What are some of your favorite villains? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, did you agree with my list? Let me know that in the comments below. Also, leave a like on this video, subscribe, click on the bell icon to receive all notifications from the MCU HQ. That's going to be it. Have a great day, guys.